So it's been announced today that Andy Ruiz will step in and will fight Anthony Joshua on June the 1st as a replacement for Jarrell Miller. Andy Ruiz, as I said in my previous video, he's not the opponent I would have picked first, but he's definitely not a poor opponent. He's decent, and he has some little skills there which I think might cause Anthony Joshua some issues early on. Do I think Andy Ruiz will win this fight? Definitely not. Do I think Andy Ruiz will be competitive? Not necessarily, but I do think that his hand speed, his front foot counter punching may cause Anthony Joshua just have a little few thoughts early on in the fight. But I don't expect him to really have much to trouble Anthony Joshua. Andy Ruiz coming off the back of a win there only 2 weeks ago, so it's a quick turnaround. That win he had was against Demetrenko. He didn't really take much damage in that fight, so he should be all good to go on June the 1st, all things considered. Andy Ruiz, as I said, I would have preferred Luis Ortiz to be in there, to be fair, but Luis Ortiz's management really, really messed him up big time. Saying that Eddie Hearn gave him a low ball offer, which would have been a career high payday by an absolute country mile. As I said, Andy Ruiz, he's not the opponent I would have been, my first choice, but given the options that Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua had, I'm not massively unhappy with the choice of Andy Ruiz. I think he's game. He'll come to fight. He's only been beaten once, and that was in a very, very close fight to Joseph Parker there back at the end of 2016. And, a lot of people thought he won that fight. It was in New Zealand, which was Parker's home country. And I don't really remember the fight, but I remember at the end of the fight thinking it was close. I don't remember because it wasn't really a great fight. But Andy Ruiz, he's game, and I do think he'll come to fight. Now, Andy Ruiz, in the wake of this, has come out and called Anthony Joshua a robot. Not the first time Anthony Joshua's been called that now, to be fair, but Anthony Joshua hit back in an interview he gave to Boxing Social, which is a great channel. You should really go and check them out. They do some great interviews. And Anthony Joshua has basically said that this about Andy Ruiz. He says, "You don't want to talk. This robot will whoop him. I thought he was cool, I said. I'll just beat him up slowly. But if he talks reckless, I'll batter him. You can't push these buttons. I'll punish him." So that's what Anthony Joshua said in an interview. Now, I quite like it when Anthony Joshua comes out and starts with this, kind of, I'll punish him. I'm in there to, prove a point and stuff like that. Because I think that in some ways it's when he performs his best. But in other ways, like against Dillian Whyte, he can be a bit reckless. Now, going into the fight with Jarrell Miller was really trying to push Anthony Joshua's buttons, saying things like, he was going to, take his mum out, which I thought was very, very low. I didn't like that at all. You can trash talk, but going that far is a bit kind of, shoving Anthony Joshua at the press conference. And I think this is all kind of building for Anthony Joshua. I think he really wanted to make a statement and punish Jarrell Miller. And what I think Anthony Joshua is doing now is that he's just going to focus all that onto Andy Ruiz. And if I was Andy Ruiz, I would want to make sure that I have my chin down and my hands up high, because Anthony Joshua, I think, will come out swinging in this fight. Anthony Joshua will be fighting in hostile territory. Let's not beat around the bush here. Even though he's not fighting Jarrell Miller, who is a native of New York, he's still going to be the away fighter to an extent. Andy Ruiz is Mexican-American, as far as I believe. So, I think there'll still be kind of a following towards Andy Ruiz. Now, that's not being said, Anthony Joshua will be bringing a lot of fans over from the UK. But whereas Anthony Joshua will be getting cheered most of the time, there's going to be some boos in MSG, I think. I definitely wouldn't be surprised if I hear some boos. So we'll see how Anthony Joshua reacts to that. But I definitely think that he'll perform better against Andy Ruiz than he will against Miller, purely because I don't think there's, even though he wants to go in there and hurt Andy Ruiz, I don't think he's as necessarily going to be as, what's the word, kind of in-depth into this fight. Kind of, not in-depth, but kind of like, his heart really going into the fight. Because I kind of felt that when he was saying these things about Jarrell Miller, he was really going heart first into this fight. And that's kind of when Anthony Joshua can slip up. But with Andy Ruiz, I should say, I definitely think that, him saying he wants to batter Andy Ruiz, I think this is just pent-up frustration. And I think that this actually probably will help him a bit, because he's not going to be fighting necessarily with a chip on the shoulder. I think it'd be similar to how he fought against Dominic Brazil, where he didn't really like Dominic Brazil. He had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, but he just went in there and performed. I think it'd be something similar to that in this fight. So that's what I think about this fight. Again, on my thoughts on Andy Ruiz as an opponent, yes, he's not the first opponent I would have picked. He sure as hell isn't the worst. Considering there was guys like Manuel Char on the short list of opponents, I'd much prefer seeing Anthony Joshua fight Andy Ruiz than I would see him fight Manuel Char. Definitely. So those are my thoughts on this. Leave yours down below. Are you looking forward to this fight? I've seen a lot of people comment on one of my other videos saying that they don't really rate Andy Ruiz and they think it's going to be an easy night's work for Anthony Joshua. Look, I think Anthony Joshua's going to win the fight. But do I think Ruiz won't have some moments of success in this fight? I definitely do. I think Ruiz will have a few moments of success. But ultimately, I expect Anthony Joshua to win. Probably stop Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz has never shown any vulnerability in the chin department. So we'll have to see how his chin holds up. But you know, you can only take so many shots. And I've never really seen Andy Ruiz as having, an amazing defense. So I expect Anthony Joshua to have a reasonably straightforward time in this fight. He's out there to make a statement in America. That's what I think Anthony Joshua's out to do. So let me know what you guys think of this video. Thanks again for dropping by the channel. If you like it, please hit subscribe. And as always, I will talk to you after.